My name is Will Kimbley. I work for Tulare County Office of Ed. I do have a day job, but my day job is doing stuff like this, although usually it's at a school or the county office or something like that. Stepped out of the classroom, former middle school and elementary school teacher, as well as a tech teacher on special assignment, technology coach, and I kind of hang around Q and other technology conferences way too much. As you can see, I tend to keep up with my own professional development. I'm on Twitter at @WillKimbley, so if you want to tweet out during the session, make sure hashtag Q15, and you can tag my handle if you want, @WillKimbley. I always promise you my website. That's where the QR code will take you to this website here. And there's a page in there on Google Forms where a number of presentations. This presentation is actually a compilation of several presentations I have on there. I will load this into the website later on today. But so this is the website, teachinteractive.org. Write that down. A lot of great resources there, as well as my contact information. I do offer free lifetime tech support for all my sessions, which is probably why people are tweeting me, asking me questions right now. All right, so what is a form? I didn't used to tell this part because I figured if they were coming to a session on Google Forms, they kind of maybe knew what it was, and then somebody stopped me and says, hey, what is a Google Form? So a Google Form is this. It's a tool in Google Drive that takes something that looks like this, with questions that people can fill out and click submit, and takes those answers and it drops them into a spreadsheet, handy dandy spreadsheet. And once the data is in a spreadsheet, you can do all kinds of things with a Google form. You can do quizzes, surveys, you collect data. If you're a science or math teacher, you should be all over Google Forms. They can be filled out on any device without a Google account. They can be on a phone, they can be on a tablet. Your students should be collecting data. Okay, and in fact, okay, as a former math and science teacher, your students, no matter what class you are in, should be collecting some form of data somewhere, and one of the best tools around for that is a Google form. So get on it. We're waiting. All right, so to create a form in Google Drive, you got to be logged in. You do need an account to create a form, you click New, and if you don't see Google Forms listed there, there's a thing called More. If you hover over that, you'll see Google Forms. You can change the theme. Most Google Forms come kind of plain, and some people like to pretty them up. The cool thing is Google Forms recently made some changes to be able to customize those themes, which is really cool. They used to have like 97, it was a really weird number, 97 different themes, and they dropped down to about 20, but now it's kind of unlimited because you can do your own. So once you click Change Theme, you get this lovely pop-up over here, and you can choose one of their default themes, but this is what I like, is where you can click Customize. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Once you've set one up, you can also copy the theme from another form. So if you've created your own customized theme, you don't have to recreate it over and over again. It will, you can copy that from your other form. Once you have that open, in the sidebar there, you have all of these lovely options here where you can change the header image, and they have a bunch of different types and groupings. Some of them are animated, the little barbecue grill, the little flames dance is really cute. But down here at the bottom, if you have stuff loaded in Google Drive or Upload, you can upload your customized banners, and it's pretty cool. First thing you need to do when you create a form is change the title. It's never cool to get a form called Untitled Form. I get those. I had someone send me one. They wanted me to present at their conference or at their school, and they sent a form called Untitled Form. Of course, I said yes, because you obviously need the help. So make sure you do that. To do that, you just click on the word where it says Untitled Quiz, and you just, Untitled Form, and change it. You can always click on that and make those changes at any time. So this is something really important to understand about Google Forms. Right? It's unlike any other thing in the Google Drive-averse. Yes, I totally just made up that word, Drive-averse. If you go into a Google Slides presentation, you're just in the Google Slides presentation. You edit your slides, you can click Present, just like I'm doing. This is done in Google Slides. Or if you go into a Google Doc, the only thing you need to make a Google Doc work is your web browser. You go into the Google Doc and you work on it. Google Forms requires 3 different things working together to make it work. The first thing is this editing view that you see a screenshot of here. This is where you add in the questions, where you can move them around. You can edit the questions. This is the editing view. It exists in a web browser. There's a URL at the top That is not the link you want to share, okay? Not unless you want somebody else to help you edit the form. You can now, which is really great news, you can now share a form and collaborate with other people. So this is the editing view. There is the live view. That is the one you actually want them to fill out. So in the editing view, up at the top, you'll see View Live Form. If you click on that, it takes you to the live view of the form. That URL across the top is the one you post on your website, in Edmodo, in Google Classroom, post into an email, or get a short URL of, whatever you want to do. But that is the live view. And then you have the spreadsheet view. That is where your data goes. You can take your data. You don't have to join it to a spreadsheet, but you can and you should, because most of the time you're collecting data. And put it in that spreadsheet, and then you can manipulate it from there. If you want to share the responses with other people, you can share that link just like you share a link to any spreadsheet. But it requires the editing, the live, and the spreadsheet. Those three things all working together to make a Google form work. And you need to be able to negotiate your way, navigate back and forth between them successfully. So if you're in the spreadsheet view, so I showed you in the live view, you can click View Live Form. You can also choose response destination or see responses, so you can navigate to the spreadsheet or the live view right up here in the header of the editing. In the spreadsheet, if you click on Form up in the toolbar, you can go to the editing view or the live view. One of the great things about, so I mentioned that you have the spreadsheet, your information goes there. You can also show a summary of responses. And if you show a summary of responses, this is the kind of information you get. It's best for multiple choice questions. If it's just a text question, you'll just see lines of text that people have entered in, and it's not very readable. But if you want to examine your data, it's a quick way of making these charts. I just go to summary responses, and any of my multiple choice questions, it created these graphs for me. Sometimes it's bar graphs, sometimes it's pie graphs. I'm not sure why. I haven't investigated the whys and wherefores of on what whim Google Forms decides what kind of graph it chooses, probably based on the type of data or the data question. But you can do that. So editing the questions. The first question you get that you cannot see here is a multiple choice question. My animation didn't work. That's a problem when you make a new slide. Here's an important thing. See where it says Add Item? If I click Add Item, it's going to just add in a question type, and sometimes it picks it at random based on what I've been using here. But if I want to choose a different question type, then it randomly put it in there. If I click the little arrow next to Add Item, that gives me the choice where I can choose all of those things. So always click that arrow. And then there are your question types. All right. So you have a text question. That's kind of obvious. You can fill it out. Usually that's a small box for like the name or a short answer. Or you can have a paragraph text box, which gives them a larger space to fill out their information. It doesn't really, the amount of information that goes into, you can go into a text box, a text question, as well as a paragraph text question. The same amount of information can go into both. But the paragraph text gives them a larger field to put in their answer. So if you're asking something that requires several sentences or something like that, you probably want to give them a paragraph text. But if you are asking them their name, you don't need to give them a paragraph text box, okay? There are three types of multiple choice questions. You have your multiple choice, your check boxes, and choose from a list. Multiple choice is just exactly what it sounds like. You choose one of the options that are there. And then on the check boxes, you can choose multiple items in the check boxes. So they can choose 2 or 3 or 4 or however many they want. Choose from a list gives a drop down. So one of the questions in a form that I have has almost about 30 responses, and that would eat up a lot of form space. So if they click on it, it drops down. They can choose whichever option they want. They have scale questions, grid questions, and date and time questions. And let me just jump over. So if you want to edit a question, if you hover the cursor over the question, you will see something that looks like this. A pencil to edit. You will see a duplicate, so you can duplicate a question, or you can delete the question. So just get in there and I managed to put all those things in there. So, okay, we talked about this already. Drop-down list, date and time. Here's an example of a scale question. I'll pause while that sinks in, okay? All right, grid questions are like this. So in a grid question, they give you the options of rows and columns. You fill out that information, you can create a grid question there. So it's kind of nice. And you can restrict it, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the advanced features for the questions in just a second. So those are the question types. Again, if you want to add in a question, click the little button next to add item, and you get to choose from it. Because sometimes you want to put in an image or a video, which yes, you can put a YouTube video inside your form, and then ask questions about that video. Or you can put an image in there and ask questions about that image. You can put section headers and page breaks, which have room and space for text. So you can put in a poem or a paragraph or an essay and then ask questions about that text that you put in there. I get asked this a lot. How do I put a question in an image or a video? The answer is you can't. You put in the image or video, then insert questions and ask questions about the image or video that's above it. There's also insert up here. You can insert all of those types there. And we talked about the section header and page breaks already, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. And I mentioned image and video. One of the things I really like is branch logic, and that is go to page based on answer. If you go to page, if you have multiple choice questions, if you check the box there next to go to page based on answer, you can choose go to page 2, go to page 3. Both of these went to page 3. Because if you ask a question like 3/4 plus 2/3, there's a lot of ways to get that wrong. If you ever taught 6th grade math, you know that. Students will find a lot of ways to answer that question wrong. And so this would be a way to do a diagnostic quiz that if they answered 5/7, they probably don't understand least common multiples, okay? So you send them to page 2, and on page 2, you have a question about least common multiples. They answer that question. You send them back to another question and get them going. Or if they answer 17/12, they don't understand simplification. So send them to that. One of the things in multiple choice, and I don't have this on a slide, but you'll see add other. So sometimes you ask a question and you didn't think of all the answer options. So if you think that's a possibility, click the add other. It gives them a little text box they can add information into. And it's also kind of a cool thing because you can ask a multiple choice question and then say, please explain under other. So they've selected their choice, but then explained why they made that choice or more information about that in the same question. So that's kind of a cool thing for that. It does require page breaks, so you have to insert the page breaks and name the page break. So I named this page least common multiple, named this page simplification. That way you know what page you're sending them to. Right? You want that flow of being able to see that. And I'll show you some other really cool things you can do with branch logic in a bit. One of the cool new features on the question types is data validation. And data validation for numbers. So in a text question, you have a little data validation box down there, and people miss it. Click on that, and it pops open. And it's for a number. The first selection is number. You can select, and you can force it to be a number greater than, equal to. You can force it to be just a number, that it is a number. And one of the reasons why you would want to do that is if you type in the number 3 and you type in THREE, it's going into a spreadsheet. The number 3 and the word 3 do not sort. And I want to force it to be in a specific type, or I can force it to be a whole number or between. So that's kind of a cool thing. The next one is for text, and there's a few options. The one I like is email address, because you've asked people for their email address. They type in none of your business. All right? And so now they have to type in none of your business at gmail.com. Okay? It does not check it to see if it's a valid email address. They check to see if it's a valid email format. So they can still give you noneofyourbusiness@gmail.com, which is probably not a working Gmail account, I'm guessing. Okay, certainly not theirs. The other thing is pretty cool is a URL. So I had students turn in links to websites and links to Google Docs, and they try to type them in. You ever try to type in the URL of a Google Doc? Okay, middle school students will do that. They will try. It's impossible. Well, not totally impossible, but they will try. So by forcing the data validation to actually be a valid URL, that's kind of a cool thing. They can't give you a fake URL or just simply mistyping it, whether they were intentionally doing it or not. If I add in a paragraph text, if I go to advanced settings, the data validation is a minimum and a maximum character count. So if you want students to type in, 100 words, give them a 500 or 600 character count. If you ask teachers a question or administrators, give them a maximum character count. Okay? Just saying. Not judging, just commenting. If you change the question type to multiple choice, you have the option to shuffle the option order. That way, if they're looking over and going, oh, they chose the first answer on that question. Well, it may not be the same first answer because it shuffled the answer options in a multiple choice. You get the same option in checkboxes, but you also get to select at least, to select at most, or to select exactly. So if I say choose your 2 favorite teachers, I can force them to choose exactly 2. Or choose up to 3 of your favorite items to bring to the party. I don't know. And then you can force them to choose at most 3. So you can do that in checkboxes. Choose from a list. The only option there is to shuffle the option order, so same thing as multiple choice. There's no advanced features on the scale question, although you can change the scale and you can label the ends of the scale. The grid question, the advanced settings, is to shuffle the row order, but also to limit to 1 response per column. So they can't choose everything in that column. They can only choose 1 item, which is kind of a nice feature. And I think that's all of the question types, because on date and time, there's no advanced options. But the reason why you would put in a time question, because they could type in a date question, but if you type in March 3rd, and you type in 3-3, again, it's going to a spreadsheet. I want to be able to sort that. And 3-3 and March 3rd sorts separately. So forcing it to be in a common format, such as by date, is a way to do data validation by putting it as a date question instead of a text question. So if you ask a date question, it puts it in a particular format, which means that everybody that answers that, the format of that date is the same instead of typing in 3-3 versus March 3, okay? And that way I can sort, because if I say, on what date do you want to meet? And people are putting in different dates, I want to be able to sort that so I can group them. So speaking of choices like that, I'm going to show you something really cool that's brand new. So at Fall Q back in October, the night before I was presenting on Google Forms, the next morning, I get an email at 7 p.m. saying they've now added add-ons in Forms. It's like, that's awesome. Why couldn't you have done that a week ago? I'm presenting tomorrow morning, okay? But I'll show you some of the add-ons that are kind of cool. Choice Eliminator. So who's bringing cupcakes to the party? All right, you don't want to have 10 trays of cupcakes. Well, maybe you do, okay? Not judging. But if you, you don't want that to be all that you get there, right? So you can put up a list and say, here's the items we would like to have at the party, and Choice Eliminator, if you use that add-on, will eliminate that once somebody has selected or selected a number of them. Parent-teacher conferences or other things, you put in the dates and say, these are the dates and times I have available. Once somebody chooses it, poof, no one else gets to choose it, and that makes your life a lot easier. Instead of emails back and forth trying to schedule stuff, okay? Another one, I'm not going to talk about all these, form notifications, getting emails. There is a form notifier built into Google Forms that will send you an email. This gives you a little more robust notifications so that people get an email when stuff happens. So maybe you make a bullying reporting form, put up a QR code and the short URL around campus. Student sees bullying, they snap a report, or snap it with a QR code, fill it out, bam, an administrator gets an email saying a bullying incident has occurred. They can respond to it. You can also do this with a class behavior issue. Fill out the form really quick, bam, bam, administrator gets an email saying, hey, there's an incident, here's what happened. And it also gives you a record of that, rather than writing a note and sending it to the office. Let's see. Form publisher takes the information and puts it into a doc. I don't find it quite as useful as Autocrat was, but it is kind of cool. Form limiter is a time, maybe you only want the first 100 responses, or you want it to only be available within a certain window. You used to have to go in manually and turn the form on and off. Now you can set form limiter to control the parameters of when the form is available. How many of you math teachers out there? You like to write math expressions and ask questions about them, or do graphs? GMath. If you know anything about writing in latex, it uses some of the latex type of scripting to create the math formulas and graphs and other things for your quizzes. So just showing you a few of the add-ons there. Down at the bottom, you have the edit confirmation. You can customize that. The default is your response has been recorded. You can say, thanks for filling this out. Please contact so-and-so. Put an email address, if you have further questions or whatever. Show link to submit another response. So if you're, somebody can fill it out multiple times. It's kind of a nice little thing. Or publish and show the results. Allow them to edit their responses after submitting. You ever hit the button? Say, oh, I should have answered that different. You can give them the opportunity to get past that. Here's the built-in notification rules. It's in the spreadsheet. Click Tools and then Notification Rules, and it comes up, and then you get an email, daily digest, or right away about what's changed in the spreadsheet. You can share and collaborate. So in the upper right-hand corner, if you click Send Form, this pops up. You get the link to share, an embed code if you have a website, use social media, and send them an email, or down here in blue, add collaborators. Well, this is one that's kind of cool. So most of us are kind of used to, because if you look at that long URL for the form, you really, you don't want somebody typing that in. If you're posting it in an email, it doesn't matter, right? But if you want them to type it in, we've used goo.gl, bit.ly, tinyURL, and instead of jumping out to one of those, you could. It's built right in here. You can grab a short URL right there. It makes it easier for people to type in. So just saves you like a click or two. There are add-ons for spreadsheets. Those have been around for a while. So there's the add-ons in the editing view of the form, but there are different add-ons in the spreadsheet view of the forms. And these are some of them, like Autocrat. Flubaroo will grade a quiz for you. So mostly for multiple choice, one-word answers, and numerical answers. And the one-word answers is if you could think of all the possible misspellings. But Flubaroo is really good for grading those types of questions, and maybe we'll have time to even do a demonstration on it. And I talked about the forms add-ons already. All right, so let's talk about some of the ways to use forms beyond a quiz or a survey. So how many of you love Google Classroom? It's like crack for Google teachers, right? It's like awesome. If you haven't used Google Classroom and you use Google Apps, go play with it. It's pretty easy to figure out. If not, come to my session tomorrow on it. So before, because I'm a OG, original Googler, okay? Yeah, okay, some of you got that, all right? Some of you are from different parts. Anyway, never mind. You gotta laugh, I'm sitting here in front of this crowd. I've got these bright lights on me and a video camera, and if I'm not cracking jokes, I'm gonna start crying in a minute here. Just kidding. All right, so assignment Dropbox template. Because I've been using Google Drive since about 2007, I had to figure out a way to manage it. Because have you ever noticed when you share a document, there's this little thing that says send email? Ever try to get middle schoolers and elementary schools to uncheck that send email? Okay, well, last time I was in the classroom, I had 210 students. I don't want 210 email notifications about one assignment, okay? I didn't want it when I had 38 students teaching 6th grade, okay? So this is great in any web-based assignment. So if you want to create a Google form for send me the URL to your funniest cat video, I don't know why you would, but you could. But any web, so Powtoons. Have your students create a Powtoon or a GoAnimate or a Thing Link or a Voki and share the URL into a spreadsheet. If you're using Google Classroom, this is less useful, but it is still a way to collect data and links. So it's pretty simple. Oh, by the way, here's a tip. At the bottom of each question, when you create it in a Google form, there's a little box that says required question. Okay, confession time. Don't raise your hand, okay? No one needs to come out about this. How many of you have been online and you filled out a form and you click submit and you got the little pop-up that said, you didn't answer that question? Okay, if it happens to you, yeah, you don't have to admit that, but it happens to some people. If you look around the room, you could probably spot them. So make all questions required so they don't accidentally miss one. Right? Unless you truly don't need that information or it's truly optional, just get in that habit. Every time you create a question, that's the first thing you check is required. I wish there was a way to set it as a default. When I am president of Google, it will happen, but so far it's not happening. Oh, let me point out this little blue line. How many see that blue line there? That blue line sits next to your last edited question, okay? If I click add item down here, it's going to just drop my question here. But what if I want a question between this question and this question? I can use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move that blue line up and down. And then instead of clicking add item, I can click insert up here, and it will insert that question in between those questions. So move your blue line and click insert up here, and it will insert it right after that blue line, okay? You can rearrange the questions in a Google form so by dragging and dropping them. Caveat, it does not rearrange the columns in your spreadsheet. You can, however, rearrange the columns in your spreadsheet. So if it gets really bad and you've moved a lot of questions around, just join it to a different spreadsheet. Okay, you have that option of changing which spreadsheet your data goes to. So when they changed over to that, instead of automatically creating a spreadsheet every time you created a form, they changed it so they give you the option of if you wanted to join it to a form and changing from form to form. I thought that one of the things that it should be able to do is have multiple forms going to the same spreadsheet and just going to different pages, and it didn't work. And I was doing a workshop for some teachers a few months ago, and they asked about that, and I said, no. I said, hey, let's try it. We tried it and it works. You can choose which spreadsheet your form goes to and have them all have several forms going to the same spreadsheet, and they'll go to different pages so you can collect them all in that same. So like that if you're having them turn in assignments in a Google form, this Google form like this here, you can have them all go, and it would be each assignment would be on a different page in that spreadsheet. So you would have one spreadsheet instead of multiple spreadsheets. They would go on a different sheet tab in that same spreadsheet, yeah. So if you are collecting a Google Apps assignment, remind them. This is the one thing, you still have to remind them, change the share settings. But, so I put that in the help text up at the top. If you're asking a question like what period are you in, make that a multiple choice question. Because if you type in period 3 and you type in third period, it's going to sort different. I'm going to hammer it again. It's going into a spreadsheet. It's data. You want to sort it. You want to manipulate that data. And you want to get all your third period kids in the same group. So make things like that a multiple choice question. You can usually rely on them to type in their name correctly. Sometimes, okay. And if not, it's usually close enough that it'll sort okay. But if you're, because that's a lot better than trying to put in 38 names into a form. Oh, here's another tip. Remember, it's going into a spreadsheet. You want to be able to sort it. Ask the first name and last name as 2 separate questions. Because if the first name and last name is in the same cell, it's not going to sort by first name and by last name. Okay, it was only going to sort by that, whatever the information is in that cell. So if you want to sort by both first name and last name, ask them as 2 separate questions. Remind them again for the link. So it's just the link they put into paste it into a text question. Remember that data validation? Here's where it comes into play. Click text, or change it from number to text and change it to URL. It forces the link that they turn into you to be a valid URL. Yay. Don't make with this form every time. It's only like 4 questions. But make when you call a template, and then click File, make a copy. Here's a free tip. If somebody ever shares a Google Doc with you and they give you view-only permissions, but you want your own copy of it that you can edit, click File, make a copy. You've got your own. It doesn't mess with theirs. Even if they give you editing permissions, you don't want to mess up their doc. File, make a copy. It's one of the greatest inventions of the Googledom. Totally made that one up too. All right. Okay. How many of you love being able to sort by range in a spreadsheet, and you've been doing that in Google Spreadsheets and Excel? Well, you can't do that in a Google Form spreadsheet for whatever reason, okay? You can only sort 1 column at a time. But you can still sort by range. You got to kind of do a workaround. So I've asked, for period, first name, and last name, but I want it sorted by first name, last name, and period. Or last name first. So if you want it, period, last name, first name, you sort the first name column, then the last name column, then the period column, and you can do that. So if I want to sort the first name column, I click on the little arrow up there and sort that column. Then I go to the next column, sort that one, and then it will be, so if you sort in this reverse order, this will be the order that you will actually get. So that will help out with your sorting woes. And then you can view the responses. The links that they paste in there will be live. You'll notice these are not even to a Google Doc. They are to a Powtoon. So you can click on those links and access. All right. So I'm going to show you something so simple that a 7th grade girl can do it. Because a 7th grade girl invented this. Jeez. All right. So let's go out to a live example. Where do servals live near? Sand, grass, rocks, or water? The beauty of this is it doesn't matter if you even know what a serval is or what the correct answer is, because you're going to find out right away whether your answer was right or wrong. We know from brain research that the closer the feedback is to the input, the stronger the learning. There's even some research that indicates if they give a wrong answer, they're more likely to remember the right answer, mostly out of fear, embarrassment, and humiliation, but they will remember it. Okay, so where do servals live near? Sand, grass, rocks, or water? Holler it out. Grass. All right, I heard grass. All right, I'm going to click on that. We're going to click continue. They live near water. And what I love about, and this is her original one. This was the original instant feedback quiz. Servals live near water. She goes on, she's teaching. 7th grade girl, she's teaching. She's not creating a quiz, she's teaching. Then ask the next question, how big are their ears? Small, big, or average? Big. Somebody was Googling while I was talking. Because they are big, yes. All right, so anyway, that is the serval quiz. And the way she did this, return to full screen here, was really simple. She put in a question. It doesn't have to be multiple choice. You can type in the answer. In fact, it's probably better if they type in an answer because they're mentally committing to that answer and they're not just clicking a button. Okay? Ask a question. Remember don't click add item because that would put in a question. Click the arrow next to add item because you don't want a question. You want a page break. The answer goes in the page breaks. So your workflow looks something like this. Question, page break, question, page break, question, page break. Your questions go in the questions. Your answers go in the page breaks. You can even put links in the page breaks. The links become live. So that if they click on them, it will take them out to the website. So here's the workflow. Question, page break, question, page break, question, answer, question, answer. In the presentation, there'll be a link to an example. It'll take you to the editing view of the form. And you'll notice when she created that, you saw the answer and the next question at the same time. That messes with some people. can't handle that. Put in 2 page breaks. The second page break, make it blank. That way they have to click continue, and then they see the next question. So question, 2 page breaks, question, 2 page breaks, the second page break being blank. Okay? Branch logic. Remember I talked about that earlier, that go to page based on answer? And this also works on the same workflow of question, page break, question, page break. This is a choose your own adventure story. All right? So we have a piece of the story there. Once upon a time, a normal young boy, which is really stretching the truth since this is my children. They found a trap door underneath the closet, and so you ask the question, do they go through the door or do they keep the door closed? They go through the door. They're my kids. They're crazy, okay? They'll do it. It's a trap door under the house. It's dark. It's mysterious. Of course they're going to do it. They're kids. I put in a picture, make it interesting, right? Tells the next piece of the story. Do they go in the darkness or get a flashlight? Right? So you can create these stories, and depending on which page you're sending it to, they see that different part of the story. On my website, there are several of them, some that were created by teachers. The one on Dia de los Muertos, can you tell I'm a gringo, is a fantastic one. She did some great customization of the background and colors and fonts and images, and you can even put videos in there to make it kind of cool and interesting. But have your students create these choose your own adventure stories. There's a link to Kate Petty, her website when she was in the classroom, and where a bunch of links to student created ones. Some really cool stuff you can do with choose your own adventure stories. So this is how it works. You have the story piece. Remember that page break? This is the text that I put in the page break. That's the piece of the story that they're going to read. And then you ask a question involving a choice. Make it a multiple choice question, yes or no or whatever. Go to page based on answer, and then select what part of the story you want them to direct that to. I would recommend for your students that they pre-write this. This is a great writing tool. If you want your students to write, have them write out their story, do some graphic maps, and plot this plot chart. And I've got some examples of some simple plot charts on the website you can take a look at too. But have your students pre-write this and then create these. Unless it's going to be a fairly simple story like this. All right, so some resources I promised you. On my teachinteractive.org website, there is a Google Forms cheat sheet. Lots of screenshots, a lot of things that'll show you all this stuff. Google Forms training, there's some online training there. Forms help. Eric Kurtz has a great website information. Here's some stuff about some of the Forms add-ons, some of the better ones. I think it's an article by Richard Byrne. Administrators, or if you know an administrator, tell them about the website portical.org. That Lead 3 conference I mentioned earlier is put on by TCAL. Q is also one of the sponsors, and AXA. But we have a website, and I'm part of the TCAL cadre, where we have technology resources for administrators, and teachers can use them too. But things like a bullying report form that's already created for you, classroom walkthroughs, things like that. So we have a lot of forms that are already created, as well as a bunch of other technology resources. There's a great blog. I know it's great because I write for it. A couple of you got that? All right, thank you. An article here on 80+ Google Forms for the classroom. And let me jump out because we still have some time to do some kind of cool stuff here. And I mentioned Flubaroo. And so let me get over here. So on the website, if you want to find my resources, if you hover over Google Apps, you'll see Google Forms. And there is a quiz that you can take here. Go to that short URL on any device, goo.gl, Y, capital P, 2, capital M, Q, capital M. If you're on my website and on that page, you can just click on that link. The one that says goo.gl. So if you're on the Teach Interactive website. What's that? So this is the Google Forms page. Hover over Google Apps, you'll see Google Forms. And then down there, you'll see that link. All right, so what you're going to see here is, let me zoom back in, and I'll just, you see one of the columns, or one of the rows in the spreadsheet is called Answer Key. The way that got in there is I went into the quiz itself, filled it out, and I said my name was Answer Key. And you want to be the first person to do that. Puts it in there, all right? And then you can then identify that, because the way this works is Google is, or the Flubaroo is looking at this answer that I've identified as the correct answer, and it's comparing all of these with that, it's looking for an exact match. It looks at this one, and it's looking at all these, looking for an exact match. That's why it works for multiple choice questions, because you're going to get an exact match. If you're typing in a sentence, it's not going to get an exact match because they're going to type in different sentences. So it's one-word questions that or multiple choice. Numeric questions you can get by with. Number one, you can force it to be a number, and because no one in the right mind would type in F-I-F-T-Y-T-H-R-E-E, they will type in 5-3, right? If you can think of all the possible misspellings, such as potassium with two S's or one, if you put a percent or in between them, it will account for all of those as a correct answer, or even multiple different words, maybe synonyms. You could put in synonyms and percent or, and it will accept any of those as a correct answer. So I need to do something really quick here. So I've identified the answer. I go to Addons, Flubaroo. By the way, this is a spreadsheet add-on. Flubaroo. I'm going to regrade the assignment. If you've never graded before, it'll just say grade assignment. I'm going to regrade the assignment. And then it warns me it's going to replace my existing grades. I'm okay with that. All right, it identifies the question types, and it's really good at this. You notice it identifies first name, last name, and email as identifying student information. Point values, so order of operations, a little more challenging. We'll make that 4 points. If you don't know your periodic table, it can be challenging, so that's worth 5 points if you know that. What city are you from? Well, not everybody can be from a really cool city like San Francisco like me. So I'm going to skip grading because that would be unfair to grade you on that. All right, and I'm going to click continue. And I'm going to choose answer key as having the correct answers. That's where you select which one is. By the way, you can choose anybody's row as the correct answers. I actually did that one time. You know that one kid that always gets everything right? I literally looked at his name, chose him, and graded everybody against him. I felt really guilty about it, but I did it anyway. All right, let me zoom back in here. It creates a second tab, a second sheet in my spreadsheet called grades. Gives me a summary. Anybody that did not do well, it marks them in red. Okay. It shows their total points, percentage, time submitted. If they submit it multiple times, it will show me they submitted it 3 times, but it's only going to give me 1 grade. I'd have to check to see which one it counts, but it will show you that they submitted it multiple times. If there's a particular question, like this row 1 question, which is randomly in there because we tried something out, because one of the other question types it will grade is the grid questions. And we just learned that at my last workshop, and I forgot to actually put a grid question in on here, but it will grade that as well. So because most of you got that wrong because it wasn't a really good question, it marked that in orange. So it'll mark students in red that did not do well, and it will mark questions that people did not do well on in orange. So that's kind of a cool thing there. So that's Flubaroo. And on this website, there's a link to the Flubaroo website. Dave Abuav, that wrote the script, is a really great guy. He and I did, and a few other people did a Google Education on Air hangout about that a couple years ago. And there's a couple videos here on how to insert the Flubaroo script. Rubrics. How many of you like rubrics? All right, cool. I'm going to show you something really quick. There is a tutorial on my website for this. It will take you through it step by step because this is a fairly challenging thing to set up. But I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you, first of all, a rubric. And I'm going to explain, I'm going to insult your intelligence, and I'm going to explain how a rubric works. And I'm going to do that so I can show you how this works. So the way a rubric works is you look at this top-level competency, and you ask yourself a question: does this project meet this competency, yes or no? Right? If the answer is no, you go to this question. You ask yourself, does it meet this competency, yes or no? If you say yes, you go here. If you say yes to any of these questions, you go to this one. Does it meet that competency, yes or no? Right? Remember that whole question, page break, go to page based on answer? You put in a series of questions. Yes or no, multiple choice questions. Put that in, say yes or no. If it's no, have it continue to the next page. If the answer is no, have it continue to the next page. But if they say yes to any of these, the go to page based on answer is go to page 4. And so if they say yes, it just takes them that question. If they say yes to any of these, it's go to page 9. Because I don't know about you, but when I go into the mailroom, my mailbox doesn't change, but my focus level of looking at something like this, I can't focus to find my mailbox. Working with rubrics like this was really challenging for me as a teacher. I'd have to put my finger on that box. But if my finger moved, it didn't work for me. And there are students that if you're giving them a rubric, and you should be giving them rubrics to grade themselves, they should be looking at and assessing their own work before they ever turn it into you. I'm on my soapbox as a teacher, okay? They may not be able to focus and use that. But if you give them one question, does my project meet this competency, yes or no? They can answer that question. And if it's no, they should fix their work. But if it's yes, it takes them to the next question. Or they can just say no and give themselves whatever grade they deem. Or they can be grading each other's work. Or you can use this and then use the Flubaroo script to calculate their scores. And I've got a step-by-step tutorial in that. Questions? Yes. Sure. Yes. So Autocrat, what it does is it takes information. It's like mail merge. And so it takes information that you have that's put into your spreadsheet, and it inserts it like a mail merge into a Google Doc. And I've got some stuff on Autocrat there on the website. There's been some changes, recent changes with stuff, and I've been a little bit out of the loop on how well that's working now because it was a little hinky for a while when the changeover is in Google Forms. And one of the great things about Google is it changes all the time. That's also one of the pains in the tuchus. So teachinteractive.org. I'm on Twitter at @WillKimbley. As you can tell, I do get tweets asking questions, and I will do that. So have a good one.